In the year 1898, in the Saqqara region, a simple model of a bird made of wood was discovered. Despite the simplicity of this model and its small size, it ignited a great debate and disagreement between engineers and scientists on one side and archaeologists on the other. This ongoing debate to this day, if it were resolved through a scientific approach, far from the symbolic perspective that archaeologists tend to adopt regarding everything related to ancient artifacts, could completely change our view of the capabilities of the earliest civilizations and of the sciences they had attained. And between the habitual symbolism of archaeologists in interpreting all artifacts and the exaggeration and unrealistic imaginations, and as we are accustomed to on your channel, this subject will be addressed in a precise scientific and analytical manner. At that point, we will be able to place this model in a picture closer to reality. So stay with us. Welcome to your channel, The Lost History. Saqqara, Egypt. Located about 30 kilometers south of Cairo, it is the home of the famous Step Pyramid, archaeologically attributed to King Djoser. According to the archaeological view, the date of this pyramid goes back more than 4,000 years, and it is the oldest of Egypt's 97 pyramids, and is archaeologically considered the oldest massive stone structure in human history. Saqqara is also famous for being one of the oldest burial areas in Egypt, which earned it the title City of the Dead. And here, the famous Saqqara bird was discovered. The French archaeologist Victor Loret, in 1898, uncovered an ancient tomb containing burial remains of a person called Pi Adi Amun. He was an official who most likely dates back to the 26th dynasty, around the 6th century BC, and therefore belongs to the late period. Among the various objects that were discovered, there was a small wooden model of what appeared to be a bird in flight, beside a papyrus bearing an inscription that reads, "I want to fly." The piece is made of sycamore wood. It measures about 14 centimeters in length. It has 2 straight wings and a vertical tail, but it does not contain a horizontal tail. The artifact was later transferred to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where it was placed beside several other statues representing birds. The model remained unnoticed until 1969, when the Egyptologist Dr. Khalil Messiha was examining a collection of bird statues, and he noticed that there was something entirely different about this wooden model. What drew Dr. Khalil's attention was that the shape of the wings is straight, the strong balance of the body, the absence of legs, feathers, and the usual details found in birds. Dr. Khalil mentioned that this was extremely interesting, because on one hand, it clearly appears that this model resembles a bird, with its 2 eyes and a beak typical of a bird. But on the other hand, the wings do not resemble the wings of birds at all. The wings of birds have a uniform thickness along the length of the wing, and even in sculptures of birds, the shape of feathers appears along the entire wing. But in the Saqqara bird, the wing is thicker in the middle. Then the entire wing becomes thinner toward the tips, and there is no trace of feathers along the length of the wing. Here, archaeologists justify the matter from the perspective of symbolic representation, which sometimes lacks certain fine details. This is very strange, because the ancient Egyptians were astonishingly skilled in sculpture, and they could depict the finest details in their carvings. So how could a distorted sculpture like this emerge from their hands? With the head, eyes, and beak of a bird, but with wings that do not belong to birds. Was it merely a symbolic depiction of wings? Or is it possible that it was intentional, expressing something that was known at that time? If we set symbolism aside and begin to analyze the model scientifically, we find that the design of the wings is extremely puzzling, as if they belong to a modern aircraft possessing all the specifications of flight engineering used today. The difference between the design of bird wings and the design of aircraft wings lies in the principle of lift. Birds rise by using the flapping motion of their wings in the air, which generates lifting force. After that, the bird relies on the aerodynamic shape of its body to glide through the air. The feathers on the wings open and close to regulate the flow of air. Aircraft, on the other hand, have wings that are almost completely fixed except for very small parts, and therefore they rely on two elements to achieve lift: the power of the engines that push the aircraft forward, and the shape of the wings, which, together with kinetic energy, creates a difference in air pressure between the top and bottom of the wing, causing the aircraft to rise upward. In the Saqqara Bird, we find an increase in thickness in the middle of the wing, which creates a difference in air pressure and makes aerodynamic lift reach its highest levels. And in order to ensure smooth airflow and respect aerodynamic principles, the entire wing must become thinner toward the tips, which is clearly what we find here. It is a very modern aerodynamic design, and it is the foundation upon which modern aircraft are built today. Yet this is not everything in this design. The Saqqara Bird contains what could be called, at first glance, a mistake in depiction. That is, that the tail is vertical, not horizontal. All birds have a horizontal tail, and this tail has two essential functions without which flight would not be possible. The first function is that in the horizontal position, it acts as a rear elevator that lifts the body during flight. Without this rear lift surface, flight would be almost impossible, and the bird would not be able to maintain its path in the air. The bird also relies on the tail for steering, by tilting the tail in the vertical position to the right and to the left. In aircraft, the tail is also fixed and does not move. Therefore, the aircraft needs two essential components: a rear rudder for steering right and left, positioned vertically; a rear elevator for lift, positioned horizontally. This is what is called in aircraft the tail assembly. When we look at the Saqqara Bird, instead of the usual horizontal bird tail, we see a vertical tail. It exactly resembles the rudder in the tail of aircraft and is completely different from the tail of birds. From here arose the idea that it does not represent birds, but rather an ancient flying machine. So could the ancient Egyptians have possessed the ability to fly? In 2006, the aviation and aerodynamics expert Simon Sanderson built a scaled model of the Saqqara Bird. The model was 5 times larger than the original size, in order to test this possibility. The test was conducted at a constant speed while gradually increasing the angle of elevation and then measuring the lifting forces produced by the model. In this way, the real flight characteristics of this model can be determined. If the model generates a lifting force greater than its own weight, this means that it would indeed be capable of flying. And the surprise was that at an angle of 10 degrees, the model was able to produce a lifting force equal to 4 times its weight. This is an extremely astonishing result, as the test showed that the Saqqara Bird represents a highly advanced glider aircraft. And this design is exactly what we use today in our aircraft. But a major problem appeared during the tests. The model does not maintain its stability during flight. Rather, it collapses and falls. After examination, Sanderson discovered that the only thing preventing the Saqqara Bird from achieving stability is the absence of a rear elevator attached to the tail or a horizontal stabilizer necessary for maintaining balance. The Saqqara model, however, contains a vertical rudder and lacks only the horizontal stabilizer. So is it possible that the Saqqara Bird once possessed this crucial flight component? By examining the place where this stabilizer was supposed to be attached, we find a broken part of the tail. We can also see what might be imagined as the remains of a piece that once actually existed but was lost over time. This dark-colored section appears to me as a mounting point for a horizontal stabilizer, and according to the shape of the connection point, we can estimate its form and design. It fits perfectly in shape with the rear stabilizers of aircraft, producing the same lifting effect through its streamlined form. So could it really be that the ancient Egyptians arrived at the ideal aerodynamic design capable of producing the lifting force needed to build flying models? Computer models fully confirm that the Saqqara Bird is indeed capable of flight, and that it represents a glider aircraft with an extremely advanced design. But there is another problem that must be taken into consideration, which is the launching technique of glider aircraft. Modern gliders require other aircraft to tow them into the air and then release them once the appropriate altitude has been reached. Assuming that the Saqqara Bird is indeed a scaled model of a glider aircraft, how could the ancient Egyptians have launched such aircraft? Strangely enough, some Egyptologists believed that this type of aircraft could have been launched using catapults. This idea gained considerable acceptance among Egyptian scholars. The idea of using a catapult has a modern equivalent. Many glider enthusiasts today use a system of elastic ropes to launch their aircraft into the air, which is essentially the same concept as ancient catapults. But answering the question of how such aircraft were launched may open the door to far greater questions. How were the ancient Egyptians in that primitive era able to obtain such complex technology? If flight technology was known and available in those times, then what were the uses of such aircraft? If the ancient Egyptians had truly mastered aerodynamics and the sciences of flight to this extent, is it reasonable that they did not develop propulsion systems for these aircraft similar to those used in our modern airplanes? If ancient civilizations were truly capable of producing a machine capable of flight, they would have been far more advanced than we believe today, and this would completely change our view of ancient civilizations. So is there a missing chapter in the story of our history? Well, the mere appearance of a model with this level of professionalism in the sciences of flight, combined with the complete absence of the rest of the technologies that would normally accompany such technology, such as energy sources, propulsion systems, control mechanisms, and so on, opens the door to only two possibilities. The first is the view that proposes the existence of advanced extraterrestrial beings who visited ancient civilizations and transmitted some advanced knowledge to them. According to this view, they were responsible for building these great monuments, and they were the source of the remarkable advancement in the sciences of chemistry, medicine, astronomy, and ancient engineering. And of course, I strongly reject this view. The second possibility is that the civilizations of Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Far East, and the Americas were actually extensions of earlier ancestors who had lived in these regions for a long time, before their civilizations ended in a catastrophic manner. These later peoples may have inherited some knowledge from those earlier civilizations, which had reached a high level of advancement, while the rest of that knowledge was lost over time. In general, science does not appear suddenly. Rather, it develops in a cumulative way. For example, if the ancient Egyptians were astonishingly skilled in astronomy, medicine, engineering, chemistry, and, as we see here, in the design of flying bodies, how is it that they used bows and arrows and relied on animals for transportation and travel? The Maya in the Americas possessed extremely precise calendars that determined the timing of solar and lunar eclipses and the cycles of planets and stars, yet they did not know telescopes. Therefore, there must be a forgotten chapter in human history, and we are suffering from a loss of memory. Tell us your opinion. What do you think? Thank you for joining us on this journey. Follow us to discover more secrets of history in upcoming episodes. And until next time.